Today, we're going to be talking about what is a micro-entrepreneur, why it's the ideal business setup for a first-time freelancer in France. I'm going to talk about the micro-entrepreneur principles so you can see how it works, then the simple declarations you will have to handle once in business, and then I will talk about how it's going to help you later on to renew your business visa once you are in France, and I will keep the Q&A for later on. So I think the presentation is going to be about 20 minutes-ish, and then I will answer your question. So we have people who just created the business, visa stage. My business is currently operational in Australia. I have ideas of businesses, keen to understand visas, and if business will work with that. Someone already with a business in the US. Then we have Elizabeth, who's already freelancing, writing and strategy, working part-time, being in Paris. Okay, so let's get started. For those who don't know me, I'm Valerie, and I'm the creator of Start Business in France, and I help expatriates prepare, create, and manage their business in France. I created my business about 16 years ago, and before that, I was a business advisor to French entrepreneurs for about 10 years, which is why I know so many weird and wonderful rules about various types of activities in France, the legal structures, the tax information, and so on. So my services with my business, what I do is helping you to apply for your business visa. I do consultation for power, working more on your business ideas, strategies, set up taxes, register businesses, micro-entrepreneurs. Whenever we have an incorporated business, I introduce you to my accountants. I have a private forum, and I also have some online courses. And for those of you, if you see the geography of France, I'm in the northwest, close to the D-Day beach in Normandy, so Mont-Saint-Michel and D-Day beach. So let's get cracking and talk about what is the micro-entrepreneur. You might have heard micro-entrepreneur, auto-entrepreneur. To clarify this, it's the same thing. This is a sole trader, or what we call a sole proprietor. Sole proprietorship. So sometime in this presentation, I might refer to ME on the slide because it's a bit long to write, but micro-entrepreneur, auto-entrepreneur is the one thing. You are the business. There's no distinction between you and the business. What you also need to know is that the sole proprietor in France is called entreprise individuelle, and this is a subcategory. So there's two categories, micro-entrepreneur, and the second one is called réel simplifié. And you might think, oh, simplified, that sounds good. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Simplified is the worst setup in France. Réel simplifié, I wouldn't recommend to start with that because the horror stories you might have heard about France and people getting confused with their taxes is the réel simplifié. Why is the micro-entrepreneur, ME, the ideal tool for a freelancer? First of all, this business setup was created in France in 2009 for people who wanted to test their markets. So the whole idea about this regime is to test and trial, or for people who wanted to earn a top-up income, because this was the simplest one they could set up. And actually, since they launched it, it's been doing extremely well. We have about 1 million micro-entrepreneurs because people find it so easy to manage that most of the business created in France, new ones, probably about 90% of them, go for micro-entrepreneurs. So it's not just expats, it's everyone. So this is the easiest business setup to create and to manage in France. And the good news is that about 80% of this is done online. So hello, automatic translation. You can turn the translation when you do your work and understand what's going on. I would say that there's little administrative work to be done with the micro-entrepreneur, except there's a little caveat here for the first 3 months, where you're going to have to handle some paperwork with 3 bodies called URSSAF, Impôt, and CPM. So to start with, you're going to have some paperwork, but it's not 3 months of paperwork. It just means that over 3 months, you might receive 6, 7 letters that are very important to handle, but the rest will be done online. So you're going to be spending your time developing your business, working with your customers, rather than work on your admin. And as a freelancer, as an entrepreneur, that's what we like to hear. So this is manageable with little French, and you don't need an accountant, even if this is your first business. Now, let me explain to you what the principles of the micro-entrepreneur are. So I'm going to crack on with the presentation and take your questions a bit later. So the first principle is that the micro-entrepreneur is a pay-as-you-earn system. which means that you are only going to be paying some taxes as and when you sell something. So if you create your business and for the first 2 months you don't sell anything, you're going to be paying no taxes whatsoever. And that's the only business type in France for which this is true. Your taxes are also based on a fixed percentage of your turnover. So whenever I say turnover, I mean the total sales that you're cashing in. So you've sold for 1,000 euros, you're going to be paying a fixed percentage of that towards your taxes. And I will explain the taxes in a moment. So you're going to be declaring and paying your taxes as you go along the year. And when you get to register your business, you will decide whether you want to go for a monthly declaration or whether you want to go for a quarterly declaration. We're talking about calendar quarter. So you might think, oh, Valerie, I just hate admin, so I'm going to do the quarterly declaration. And for expats moving to France, I would say go for a quarterly declaration if you are a European citizen, because you don't need to prove that you're staying here, or if you have a business visa, which is more a long-term visa. So for instance, you might have a visa talent for 4 years, or you might have a visa vie privée famille, which is also for 3 to 4 years. If you are on a 1-year renewable visa, such as the Visa Profession Liberale, you want to go for a monthly declaration. So you're going to be creating some documents that you will use to renew your visa later on to prove that you are earning some income here. And basically, the way you're going to be doing this is that you will be logging in onto a specific site designed for the micro-entrepreneur. On there, you will declare how much sales you've cashed in over the previous quarter or month. For instance, you're going to say, okay, I've invoiced for 5,000 euros, but only received 3,000 euros. So I've been paid 3,000 euros. This is what I'm entering in the sales. There's about 3 sales to fill in. And then it will calculate the taxes automatically for you, so you can see how much you're going to be paying. You validate this page, and then you will validate the fact that in 2 months' time, they will take the money from the bank account that you have associated with the website. So basically, that is super easy. I would say the longest part is preparing your bookkeeping, so you know how much you've cashed in over the month. But once you log in onto the website, you're done within 5 minutes. Enter the amount, validate, done. And you just make a note as to when the money will be taken from your bank account. The only restriction I would say with the micro-entrepreneur is that you can't deduct your expenses. And I can hear you raving, saying, Valerie, that's it. It's so disappointing. I knew there was a catch. So you can pay for your business expenses via your business account, via your business activity. However, you don't deduct it when you declare your turnover. So for instance, let's say that I sell some drones or I sell some beauty products online, or I have an e-commerce shop. Let's say that I've sold for 2,000 euros this month. I got paid 2,000 euros. And it did cost me 500 euros to make those products, ship them, and send them. I'm declaring 2,000. I'm not taking the 500 euros out. Now, what you need to know is that although you don't see it, when the tax office decided on the fixed social charges that you are paying, they actually look at the main activities in France. I will show those in a moment, but they basically say, okay, if you're a consultant, you hardly have any expenses. So we know that roughly 30% of your sales expenses. So they did calculate a social taxes rate that takes that into account. And same thing when they looked at people buying to resell, they know you have high expenses to buy your products, you might rent some premises and so on. So they took that into account to have a low rate. So although you can't deduct your expenses, it is taken into account by the tax office. And when you pay your social charges, they take this into account. I'm going to start showing you some numbers. No need to panic. It's going to be not so funny now. But just know that below the video, if you're watching on YouTube, or when I send you the replay by email, I'm going to send you a copy of the micro-entrepreneur fact sheet that I've designed, on which you have a summary of the basic system and the tax rates. So keep that for later. If you click on the link below the YouTube video, with this, you're also going to be receiving a series of emails that add value to explain how it's working, so you feel more comfortable with this project. And now let's talk about the nitty-gritty that you all want to know. How much am I going to pay in terms of taxes? As I've explained, you're going to be paying a set amount of social charges based on your actual activity, how much you've cashed in. And in France, basically, we split up activities into 3 key categories. The first one is what we call profession libérale. So it's anyone doing an intellectual-based activity. You're providing services. You are a coach, consultant, a programmer, a teacher, a sport teacher. You would come under this category and you will pay 24.6% of social charges based on your sales. If you have a manual activity, you are build a beautician, a hairdresser, you're making manual things, craft, or you have concierge services, for instance, you are going to be paying 21.2% of social charges. And finally, if you have a shop, an e-commerce shop, you're doing buy to resell, gîtes, food stores, is 12.3%. So as you can see, they have taken into account the fact that when you sell goods, you have to buy those goods, you have higher costs so that you have lower social charges because they know there's more expenses for you to run your business. So when we talk about social charges, let me explain what those refer to because it can be quite complex. In the US, it might mean something different for you. So whenever you're paying your social charges, these are the business taxes that you are paying. This includes your health cover. So your business generates your health cover. You are paying towards the national health cover. You are also paying towards a state pension, meaning that you are putting money into a pension pot in France that you can take advantage of in the future. This is also putting some money into a training fund. Most people don't know about that, but you're putting money into a training fund, which means that from year 2, you could get some training paid for. And the generic French system. So the good thing about your French business is that the fact that you create this business automatically generates your insertion to the French system by creating your health cover, by starting to pay into a French pension. And for those of you who might have worked before in France, so in the comments that someone was working with Sciences Po, or if you worked as an employee before, if you worked as an employee, the pension pot is managed by the same body. So you could have worked as an employee and collected some pension entitlements, and then you add some on top with your micro-entrepreneur. The good news for any expats moving to France is that your business generates a health cover from day 1. So now that's on the official side. In practice, because you're new to France and we need to create your French social security number, they need to check your ID, your birth certificate, and so on, it does take 3 to 4 months for your health cover to fully work. So I would say that when you come to France with a business visa, you need to have a health cover in place. So keep that one at least for 3 to 4 months until you have your carte vitale. Also know that if you want, you could also decide to pay your income tax at the same time as your social charges. So social charges is a business tax, taxes that your business has to pay. Income tax is a tax that you have to pay as an individual towards the government for all what they're doing, building roads, the school, and so on. So this is an option for micro-entrepreneurs to say, if you want to, you can pay us now the income tax relating to your business income. I won't go too much into details because this is very complex to explain. The choice depends on your potential income, whether you're married or not, how much your spouse is earning, whether you have kids or not. It's the kind of thing that I cover more in the Power Hour. If you wanted to, just know you could pay income tax at source, called impôt libératoire. And in that case, on top of, for instance, the 26.6%, for a profession libérale, you would pay an extra 2.2%. For people providing manual services, commercial services, that would be 1%. And for people doing manual services, it will be 1.7%. So this is a way to see, okay, worst case scenario, how much would I pay in France in terms of taxes? So that's quite a lot already. I'm going to just check the next slide quickly and look at your questions to take a few if we have already a few. But you can see how the system is starting to work. I've simplified it on purpose, and you get the full tax breakdown in the fact sheet. Let me see. So we have someone with e-commerce, wondering about working as an author, likely without much success, but able to self-support. So, okay, author, if you're self-publishing, it could be a micro-entrepreneur, but if you're talking more as an artist, it could not be a micro-entrepreneur, so it might be slightly different. One thing I haven't covered in this slide that I might cover quickly now as I do a small break on taxes is to talk about visas, because I've seen a few of you are in the US or from Australia and the UK. The process is that you apply for a business visa from home. And once the visa is issued, when you land in France, you then register the business. So we have a distinction between the business visa, which allows you to come to France, and then you have to register a business. The micro-entrepreneur is usually a very good match for people who want to go for a business visa because it's this simple to create and manage, and it goes well with the business visa application. In terms of visa, we have two key visas. We have the Visa Profession Libérale, which is issued for 1 year, renewable from France. And on this one, you have to prepare a business plan, have it validated, show some savings. Then we have the Visa Talent, which is issued potentially from 1 to 4 years. You need to have at least a master's degree or 5 years experience with proof in your field, in the field on which you're going to be creating a business. And you need to invest 30,000 euros in the business. I would say many people tend to go for the Visa Profession Libérale, but Visa Talent is also a good option. Now, if I go back to the presentation, in terms of declaration, I've listed here the declarations that you may do. Don't get scared because there's 4 of them. That's the declaration you would do over a year, but not all of them will apply to you. The first one I've mentioned was the social charges declaration. This one would be on a monthly or quarterly basis, and you will declare how much you've cashed in. You don't take anything off. The second declaration is income tax. That's a personal tax. As I've said, for the micro-entrepreneur, you can pay at source. And then for everyone, you still have to do a declaration by paper the first time, and that's in May the following year. So anyone creating their business this year, they would declare in May 2026. Anybody creating their business in 2026 would declare in May 2027. So this one is just once a year. Definitely hire an accountant the first year to do it. It's about 350 euros, 450 euros for declaration. Definitely worthwhile when you have sources of income coming from different countries to get it right. A small declaration that you have to do as a micro-entrepreneur is something called the CFE, Contribution Foncière des Entreprises. You pay it from your second year in business. We're talking about calendar year, and it could be 150 to 350 euros. It's a small tax we pay to the local authorities where our business is based, and we check the bill in October and pay it in December. And the last one is VAT. VAT is optional. VAT is like a sales tax that you collect for the state. When you register your micro-entrepreneur, you're not VAT registered. It's once you reach a certain level of sales that you have to start collecting VAT. And that threshold is 41,000 euros for services, 93,000 euros-ish for buy-to-resell shops. That number might change slightly because the government is talking about the budget for 2026. It's always a subject that they cover. But just know that you might say, well, actually, my turnover is too small if I take the VAT into account. Not really. If you're working B2B, if you're working business to business, and you're likely to work with customers in Europe or outside of the EU, B2B, you won't be invoicing VAT if it's outside of France. So you still have to be VAT registered, but you don't become more expensive. If you're working with French businesses, they used to handle VAT, so you don't become more expensive either because they claim it back. It's a bit more tricky when you're working B2C, business to consumer, because then you have to charge the VAT or reduce slightly your margin. So the last topic I wanted to cover before I start taking your questions is why is the micro-entrepreneur very useful to renew your business visa? The great news about the micro-entrepreneur is that this is going to be generating some attestations that you will need in a year's time if you have a business visa to renew your visa with the prefecture. And I've listed the documents that are going to pretty much land on your online website or that you can download. The first one being your official business ID called a SIRET number. That's your official number proving that your business is existing. Your visa is issued for 12 months, but usually you submit the business visa renewal at the prefecture 3 months before the end. So 3 months before the end, when you do this, you want to prove that your business is still active. So you will go and download what we call attestation de situation INSEE extrait cabis. Sounds odd, but it's official paper stating yes, on such a date, your business is still active. Your business is also going to generate your health cover attestation needed for the visa renewal. So social security number, you have a carte vitale, and the key document is this one, the attestation proving you have a health cover in France. Your monthly turnover declaration are also going to be a proof of income you're generating. And finally, with URSSAF, which is the body you pay taxes, on that website, you'll be able to download an attestation to confirm, yep, I'm okay with my taxes, I've declared everything, it's all paid. So all of this creates a great dossier for business visa renewal. If you dig out your initial business plan, it'd be perfect. You'll have a few extra documents, but there'll be most of it prepared for you. So that's what I wanted to share with you before I start taking your questions. I know it's short and dense to take all of this, so I will send you the micro-entrepreneur fact sheet by email. It will also be below this video. If you want more help to register my micro-entrepreneur, your micro-entrepreneur, you can use my registration services for 350 euros, where I register your business. I take over the process with a body called INPI, gathering the document, making sure you get registered properly. If you are in business, you can look at Manage Your Micro-Entrepreneur, which is my group course, where in the course I show you how to read your business paper, sort the postal mail, prepare your invoice, create your online account, declare your turnover, do your bookkeeping, and so on. And beside that, we have a monthly group call where everybody joins in and asks their questions or things they're struggling with. I do updates when the law is changing as well. And you have the forum access for you. And if your situation is complex, you want to talk it through, you can also book a power hour. I'm going to stop sharing my screen to take your questions, see the questions, so don't hesitate to ask them. Just know that if you want to be in touch, I'm on those social networks. My favorite is still YouTube. I go and check messages on Instagram and LinkedIn twice a week. So let me just look at your questions. So there's Patricia who's preparing a visa application, which is a visa talent artistic. So visa talent artist, just know the setup for an artist won't be a micro-entrepreneur, it'll be a specific setup. However, your visa application has to look a bit like a business visa in the fact that you have to prepare like a business plan, proofs of potential project that you're working on, potential income, and your portfolio to show this is really artistic income. So I have someone saying, I'm coming over on a long stay visitor visa early next year and establishing a new YouTube channel as a source of supplemental income. And once settled, may venture into artistic endeavors. So if you're coming on a long stay visitor visa, just be aware that that won't be enough to create a business. You won't be able to create a business with a visitor visa. It's okay to settle down, check France, and create your YouTube channel. But if it starts to be a main source of income, at some point, you might have to switch to a business visa to declare that income. Krista, who is a glass artist, she's been doing this for years. For the last 7 years full time. She's looking to transition to France soon. She was a college student in Cannes in 1985. She'll be exploring the area. So for Krista, what's interesting, so glass artist. So some activities are between what we call artists, and some of them might be seen as more like artisan, which is manual activity. For instance, I had people before who were doing pottery. For you, we're going to be considering both the artist visa and the business visa, because if it's something that you're repeating many times, that becomes more like an artisan. And in that case, that would be a business visa, like a visa profession libérale, and it could be a micro-entrepreneur. If it's more like pure artist, like for instance, big pieces that you just sell as a one-off, then as an artist, you're coming as an artist. But I have someone who's coming over. So how does the visa work for spouse working in the business with me? So we have a couple coming over with a business together. How does the visa work for a spouse working in a business with me? What is the process when it is time for us to retire from working? How do we change the visa? So first of all, if you have two people working on the same business, in that case, it either means that you apply for one business visa each as a visa profession libérale. So it'd be pretty much the same business plan, but it's one each. But in that case, you have to show that the business is viable enough to generate enough income for two people. So the French minimum wage is SMIC is 18,000, so it's twice that. We have to show a net profit of twice that amount. Or you could decide, if one of you had a master's degree or 5 years experience in that specific field, you could go for the visa talent, which means that in that case, one person is applying for the visa. You still have to invest 30,000 euros in the business, but the spouse of the visa talent holder gets a specific visa called spouse of a visa talent. So that would be one possibility, is either you apply for one visa profession libérale each, and then you create the business, or one of you applies for the visa talent, which then enables you to work together. In terms of having a business type, yes, you could be a micro-entrepreneur, but we'd be talking about a collaborating partner. Not great for the visas. They might be looking more at a French incorporated business, is that the two of you, for instance, either as a SAL or a SAS, which is a bit more complex to set up. If you come to France and you start your business, because I've had the question as well for some other people, And let's say you want to work for 5 years, but in 5 years' time, you will have reached the age to retire. You can just switch your visa at that time to say, okay, I finished my work. For instance, let's say you had a visa profession libérale for 1 year, you did well, you managed to renew it for 4 years. So at the end of that 4 year, you can say, well, actually, now I'm ready to retire. At that point, when you get to renew your visa with the préfecture, you're just asked to switch from a business visa to an inactive visa, so a long stay visitor visa, which would enable you to stay here. I would say if you've done the 5 years, you probably want to go for the residency, 5-year residency before you close down your business, because at least you've gone for another 5 years, which gives you more flexibility. Is there a minimum amount the business must bring in a set amount of time? And if that does not occur, can our visa be removed? So the aim for business visas in France is that you have to generate the equivalent of the French, we call it SMIC, S-M-I-C. So you need to generate at least 18,000 euros, 18,500 euros net. So we're talking about after taxes, you need to have that. If we're talking about micro-entrepreneur, for somebody doing more like consultancy work, that roughly means about 26,000 to 30,000 euros of turnover per year. So as long as you're doing this and or you have savings, you can renew your visa. For instance, some people sometimes, they may not have reached this, but they might have a state pension, so they don't need so much, so they might have some savings. For instance, I have a customer, she came to France, she was retired, but she still wanted to work as a French teacher. And so she gets a pension, but she wants to work because she's active. She wants to be involved in many projects. So she has a micro-entrepreneur teaching. And in the first year she was in France, didn't quite reach the target in terms of lessons, but she had a pension. So in her cover letter, she explained, I haven't reached the SMIC through my business. However, I received so much through my state pension, therefore I'm self-sufficient. If you didn't have a pension, you would show savings to show you're earning enough. If you come over, you create a business and you earn nothing for 1 year, at that point, yes, you would be in trouble. You could have your visa not renewed. And in that case, if it's not renewed, you have to leave the country and then apply for a new visa to come back. I had the case last year for a couple who bought a large property for a gîte business. They had major building issue, which means they missed the summer season. So they missed the full summer season. Then the builder was 5 months late to do the building work, couldn't rent anything. And actually the prefecture said that they didn't believe they had a proper business, that they wanted free healthcare, so they didn't renew their visa. So there was a bit of a panic, so they had to go back. They were from the UK, so they had to go back to the UK and apply for long stay visitor visa. We had to switch to gîte business from a business to a non-professional, and the aim is, as the activity develops, in a year's time, we'll go back to a business visa because they will have generated enough. So really, if you've had problems in your cover letter, you really need to explain why you haven't reached it, show everything you've done to increase it, because, for instance, you could say the first 3 months were rubbish, and then it's really boosted. If we look at the last 5 months, the turnover is increasing, and you have customers' orders proving that you are reaching this next year. I would include those. So Elizabeth is asking, isn't there an income cap on the micro-entrepreneur setup versus incorporated business, Earl or SAL, or profession libérale? So for the micro-entrepreneur, you will see in the fact sheet that I sent you, the official maximum turnover for calendar year for somebody providing services is 77,700 euros. And for someone who's doing e-commerce, I'm checking on my paper because I'm doing it by heart, it's 188,700 euros. 77,000 roughly for services and 188,000 for somebody doing gîte buy to resell. Now, just know that this is for the first year in business. If you go above that, nobody cares for 2 years. So basically, let's say I moved to France in 1st of Jan 2025. I'm a marketing consultant. This year I make 60,000. Fine. Next year I'm making 80,000. So I'm above the threshold. That's fine. So 2026, let's say I'm above the threshold, and 2027 I make 120,000 euros. I can go above that threshold for 2 consecutive years without an issue. It's on the 3rd year that you have to move to a different business type. So you could decide, you could go above for 2 consecutive years without any worry. I would keep a track of what's happening with the budget, because this could change with the new budget 2025. But for now, that's what's been happening for 10 years. We can go above for 2 consecutive years. It's only on the 3rd one they say, okay, Next one is the real simplifié, the one I mentioned to start with, which I don't suggest to anyone. It would be the time to move to a French incorporated business, as Elizabeth was saying, for instance, an earl or a son. So I have a question. For some reason, for some of you, it's my name showing up. Said, I've applied for a visa profession libérale earlier this year and it was refused. Do you know the most common reason for refusal? I followed all the guidance and checklists online with the full business plan, etc. The one that I see that are refused tend to be somebody who's actually breaking a rule without realizing. So you're actually saying you're doing something when actually it's regulated, you're not entitled to do it. Whether they think that it doesn't look viable, for instance, they don't think that you're going to be making the projections that you've written on your business plan. You have to put a financial plan over 3 years. You might have written 80,000, and from reading your business plan, they don't believe that you're going to be making that amount of money. So it's very important. If you apply for a business visa with something that you're creating from scratch, you really want to have some potential customers or have a bit more savings because they know they're not going to be making money for a few months. So for me, the best projects are those where people might have worked as an employee in their own country, but they go freelancing and they start coming with a couple of freelancing projects with previous network, previous employers. So we've got some money coming in as they develop their new activity. And in that case, it's also acceptable to have what I call the slashers, people with two activities. So for instance, someone who might be, you work in marketing, so you do freelancing marketing, but beside that, you want to be a coach. So you're still keeping up the marketing, freelancing or marketing contracts as you develop the coaching. And as the coaching is increasing, you just then stop the marketing side when you have earning enough income. So I would say the reason for refusal for visa is usually you're doing something you're not allowed to. It's a regulated activity. You don't have the qualification. They don't think you're going to be making that turnover based on your business plan, or maybe you don't have enough experience, or you don't have enough savings. Ideally, you want to show that the business looks viable and that you have enough savings. Andy says, is it possible to have two services under one profession libérale micro-entrepreneur, for example, having e-commerce business, but also sometimes provide marketing consultancy services? Yeah, perfect. That's what I call the slashers. Perfectly acceptable also in a business visa application to say, I'm a marketing consultant and I have an e-commerce shop. And in that case, same with your business, we can register both. So in the business plan, in that case, you have to talk about the two services that you're providing to say the marketing consultancy is where I have my experience and therefore I'm generating income regularly quickly. The e-commerce is what I want to develop. I'm also where it's going to be slow. So I have the two together. And when we get to register your business, we can have two or three categories. Three start to be a bit much, but we would say primary activity. We might say consultant. Secondary activity, we would say e-commerce. You really have to be clear when you get at the stage of registering your business to say exactly what you do, because it has an impact on how I register businesses, for instance. For you, for instance, Andy, if I know that you're doing e-commerce, I would make sure I put the e-commerce first to make sure it's registered with the right body and you have the right tax rate, and I put the consultancy second, because as I slightly showed you through the presentation, in the back end, depending what you're doing, it might relate to Chambre de Commerce, Chamber of Commerce, Chambre de Métier, which is manual or more intellectual, like Profession Libérale. So yes, you can have the two. And in business visa application, to me, that works really well. I have plenty of customers doing it. Can you go a little more details comparing the two types of visas? So yes, it's a shame I didn't put the slide on the visa. But I'm going to be doing another webinar next month where I'm going to be comparing visa, Profession Libérale with a salon. So if you subscribe to my newsletter, we'll be sharing the date soon on that next webinar, which will be in November. So the easiest business visa to get is what we call the visa Profession Libérale. And with that, you can do any kind of business activity or any kind of business type. This visa is issued for 1 year, renewable from France. And you don't need to invest money in the business for this one. You don't need to have a certain level of qualification. So you could be a first-time freelancer, or you could have had a business before in your own country and move to France, it's fine. And you can do a micro-entrepreneur or an incorporated business, all types of businesses. The process for the visa Profession Libérale is that you have to work on your business plan, financial plan, gather your proofs of saving, and you're going to be submitting it online to a body called ANEF, A-N-E-F, Ministère de l'Intérieur, and they're going to give a validation on your project. So they're going to say, we think that your project looks viable, or we don't think that your project is viable. and we have to ask for them to vet it, and then we move on. So if they say yes, we move on. If they could say maybe or please clarify this and that, and usually you have 2 weeks to clarify the information, or they could say no. If they could say no, you can still reapply, but you have to change something in your business visa application. Once we have the validation from NF, then you book your appointment with TLS, you hand over your paper dossier and your document, you hand over your visa, and within 2 weeks, you get your passport back, hopefully with your visa inside. So that's the visa profession libérale. To me, the easiest one to get. I would say, now that we need to get validation from NF, I tend to say best to prepare 6 months ahead, but between 4 and 6 months to be ready to move to France. Somebody who comes to me now, in 6 months' time, we're in France. Second visa is the visa talent. This one is a bit more scary, but now that we need the validation for visa profession libérale, the length of time to prepare it is pretty much the same, because you have to prepare pretty much about the same amount of work. So visa talent, people tend to think that it's only startups, but it's not only startup. It's a visa that is issued for 1 to 4 years for someone who has at least a master's degree or at least 5 years experience in the field in which they want to work. But we want an official proof of your experience. So it could have been somebody who's been freelancing, having an incorporated business in that field before, or who have been an employee in that field, and we need official proofs, the most legal document. For the visa talent, the difference with the visa profession libérale is that you're going to have to invest 30,000 euros in the business, and that money needs to be in France, not in your home country. We need an attestation from the bank to state the money is ready to invest in the business. So that's why it's a bit harder to get, because you need to prove your qualification. You need to invest 30,000 euros. Otherwise, in terms of document, we still business plan, financial plan, proofs of saving, and we submit it to Ministère de l'Intérieur, but it's a different website. Same process, they validate, they say yes or no, they validate. So if they validate, we move along, go to the TLS meeting, and then they give you your visa, and there's a slightly bit more paperwork once you're in France. But the good thing about the visa talent is that your spouse has a visa as well, enable them to be self-employed, inactive, or work as an employee for the same length of time. And you could have up to 4 years. The only downside is we don't know until you're here whether you got 1 or 4 years. It's only when you have your titre de séjour that we know if it's 1 or 4 years. But I would say it can be a good one for someone who's had a business for a few years, 5 years, or who has a master's degree. We have Alice saying, for the VAT amount, 42,000 euros, is that annual amount or cumulative? For the micro-entrepreneur, the fiscal year, the calendar year is from 1st of Jan to 31st of December. So we count the amount that you've cashed in that year. And it starts again at 0 on the 1st of Jan the following year. So it's about roughly 41,250 for the services this year. And we start again from 0 the year after. We have someone saying, I've been working remotely from the US this year, and I'm in France with a student visa, making a change of status, but haven't created my business yet. Can I create it now and declare all my 2025 revenue before year ends? That's a bit of a tricky one, because if you're a student and you're a European student, you can create micro-entrepreneur with no issue whatsoever. When you are a non-European student, it's slightly tougher, because normally the micro-entrepreneur registration for a student is supposed to be only a part-time income and below a certain number. If you're working, I think it has to be less than 900 hours per year. And it's tricky to make up for a student how much is in income. So it's not great to have a micro-entrepreneur as a student, especially if you're then trying to switch visa to something else, because they might say, actually, you shouldn't have had that in the first place. So it's a bit tricky. It's something we'd have to talk about. I think you were trying to change to visa vie privée. If we swapped a couple of emails before, we'd have to chat to see when is your visa ending. But to me, I would think now, since having a visa as a business micro-entrepreneur as a student can be tricky when you try to switch the business. For instance, I had some people who've been studying in France, had a micro-entrepreneur. They graduated in France, so they went for the Ressé visa, which is specific to student, and visa profession libérale. And actually, they created a business without earning an income. And when we get to switch the visa, it looks bad that you had a business with no income, or you shouldn't have been there in the first place. So a bit tricky. I have 2 aspects of my business. I have a consultancy business and also a retail business. I have a friend in Paris who's a micro-entrepreneur. We could partner for the retail, but I would also like to have my own consultancy business. So you can have several businesses, provided in the first place you have a business visa. You could say, okay, I'm going to keep the consultancy business under my own micro-entrepreneur because it's super easy to manage. And then beside that, I'm going into a partnership with somebody else. And in that case, you would have what we call a SaaS, or a SaaS, when you're an associate with somebody else in a business, because you can have a sole trader and an incorporated business beside each other. I would say usually when somebody has several businesses, for instance, I have the case of someone who's a programmer. As a programmer, he's doing great and he developed games. So he went into businesses with some other developers. He started a SaaS. The idea is because with your micro-entrepreneur, you're already paying taxes, you've got your health cover, you're putting money into your pension. The best setup beside that would be a SaaS where you don't pay yourself a salary and just pay yourself in dividends. This way, you pay less taxes and you can still work on a second project. You have to see what suits your partner as to their own personal situation. So another question is professional photography a profession libérale or activité manuelle? Good question. Strangely enough, photography, les photographes are seen as manual activity, artisan, because it dates from the time where photographers used to develop their own pictures in their black studios, and also because they go on site to do some photo shoots. So photography is still registered as artisan, as a micro-entrepreneur. And I do quite a lot every year, but it's artisan. And so when we look at the social charges rate, you're on the 21.2% as a photographer. Even though you might just do digital pictures and touching pictures, it's still artisan. Alors, is there a minimum amount you need to earn annually for your profession libérale visa, or does that depend on circumstances? Are you expected to be up and running and successful immediately if it is a new business, or can you supplement with savings? Yeah, I know that's a tough one, especially for someone starting from scratch. So the aim when you renew a visa is the prefecture wants to see that you have an income of the French minimum wage, 18,000 euros, but it can be business income and all savings. But you want to show that your business may not do as great as you've written on your business plan, but it's increasing, that you have signed contract that's improving. Do put the emphasis on the fact that it's developing. And for instance, if you sign some contracts which doesn't show up yet on your turnover because you haven't sent the invoice, have those contracts signed and include them into your visa renewal so they can see that good things are happening. And also maybe show that, for instance, that from 1 month to another, you might say, okay, the business has been increasing 30% every month and keep improving, and then show savings as a backup to show that you can still support yourself in France without having reached the full amount. I just got my Ressé visa. That's the one I was mentioning. So Ressé is for a student who has graduated, so bravo, in France, and then it gives them the option for the first year after their graduation to either look for a job or be self-employed. So I'm thinking about starting a business. I'm quite confused about getting the electronic signature and whether it is compulsory for starting an ME. Another question is whether you assist with virtual office registration. So I think the first question, so Ressé is great to create your micro-entrepreneur business. And at the end of your Ressé, you will switch once again from Ressé to Profession Libérale, and you'll use all the documents you've created with your micro-entrepreneur to facilitate the visa renewal. I guess that what you're talking about for the electronic signature is when you register your business with INPI. I think you picked up the wrong setup initially when you have 3 different blocks where you can create your account. There's one that you can do without France Connect. So that's the one you have to pick. You have to pick the one, I think it's on the left-hand side or it's green, but you don't want to use France Connect or France Connect Plus, because for those you need to be in the French system to use them. So normally you don't need the electronic signature. If you've created the account or there was one way through this at the end, because you can't switch the setup now, is to use, there's a website called Trust Pro, and the other one is Trust Me app, where you can upload the document for your business registration. It adds the recognized electronic signature, and then you put it back onto the INPI. And you say, question about virtual office registration. So I guess you must be talking about the PO box. If you have a PO box, which is called adresse de domiciliation in France, you have to set this up before you register the business, so it appears on the business papers. And you can try, so my favorite is se domicilier. And the second one is les tricolores. So bonjour Valerie, I sell fashion digital products on Etsy, based in Paris, France. I'm running the business from America. I was on the student visa, but I'm looking to move back to Paris next year with a micro-entrepreneur visa. What type of business would digital product be classified as? If it's a digital product, it's seen as profession libérale because it's seen more as intellectual property or not intellectual property, but intellectual goods. So for instance, let's say you sell online courses or PDF guides. This is profession libérale. So that's a good one. So as profession libérale, and you'd be seen more like as education on online manuals. So someone's saying, so 18,000 annual gross or net per person. So it's net. So 18,000 net. Gross, I can't remember. I think it's about 20,000, 21,000 gross. And it's per person. So if you have 2 people working in the business, it's 18 times 2. Assume that increase if you have dependents, children, and so on. So I would say if you have children, usually banks add 20% on top. So you could add 20% per child. Is profession libérale visa appropriate for me to work in massage bien-être? Yeah, it's still the same because I know that visa has a weird name because as you can see in France, when we have the categories of business, profession libérale is intellectual, commercial is buy to resell and commercial services, and artisan is manual. But when you talk about visa, the visa profession libérale is the 3 of them. So even if you open an e-commerce, you do massage bien-être, it's still the profession libérale is the right one. Be careful about the word massage because massage in France is regulated. It's supposed to be people qualified as beautician or people qualified as physio. So avoid the word massage because the rule people at the prefecture or the ANF might say you're not allowed to do massage. So talk about wellness to bien-être. Is it necessary for all my earnings to go into a business bank account? If so, does the business account need to be with a French bank? So when I was talking about sending money or having money in France, that was for the Visa Talent when you have 30,000 euros in France. For the Visa Profession Libérale, when you show your savings are just in the US or in Australia, wherever on your account back home. When you do create a business in France, it's best to have a dedicated bank account so that the money from the business goes there. And at the end of each month, you transfer some money to your personal bank account as if you were paying yourself a salary. It's not a salary, but as if you were paying yourself every month. By law, when you are a micro-entrepreneur, the dedicated bank account is compulsory from 10,000 euros. For the second type of business visa, if you have 5 years experience and the requirement funds, you also need to have a client in France already established. When you submit your business visa for validation, they want to see that you're going to bring something to France, that you're going to be integrating. So you have to put a spin on what is your strategy to develop customers locally, what you're going to do. However, if you have signed customers already from the US or from Australia, perfect, because you're bridging the gap. You're saying, okay, as I move over to France, I will bring over existing customers or have those signed contracts or potentially signed contracts. That's great because at least you show that you have some money coming in. And then you put a second spin on, okay, what are you going to do once you're here to develop your customer base locally? That's for the visa people. In reality, once you're in business with your micro-entrepreneur, nobody cares where your customers are coming from. The reality is, if I look at my customers, 90% of them, the customers are from outside of France because they work in consultancy, coach, programmers. The only one who have customers in France is people with gîtes because they have people from France and from Europe. But really, even for the prefecture, when you get to renew your visa, what they want to see is, did you create the business you said you would create? Did you earn enough income? Did you use French bank? Did you declare and pay your taxes? Did you set up your health cover? They don't really look at, all right, 90% of your customers is based out of France. We won't renew. It doesn't happen. It's more for the visa purpose. You have to show you want to integrate. Is a master's degree in the US what you need for a passport talent? Oui, master's degree. Doesn't matter where the master's degree is. The only restriction on the master's degree being in France is more for a student who graduates in France and they want to go for the Rese visa. We're talking about a French master's. But if you have, for instance, this afternoon, I was talking to someone in the US, she has a marketing communication master's degree. Perfect. Can you do different activities all under one business? For instance, teaching, market selling. In theory, you could, but once we start having more than 2 or 3 activities, it's a mess. And even for you as an entrepreneur, it's like if you have 3 sides of activities, it's hard to concentrate. I would say usually if you go for a business visa, you have to make sure you focus on the one that generates the most income. So whether it's JIT and teaching or JIT and teaching retreats, that goes together, you focus on the one that generates most income. When you are in France, for instance, you could have JIT teaching and market selling, but then all of those are going to be eating up the turnover. If you go for micro-entrepreneur, you can see your turnover is restricted, so you may not want to put all your eggs in the same basket. My answer would very much vary depending on what you're doing. For instance, some of my customers, they might say, okay, they're teaching and they have a market stall, and that's their main income. But beside that, they also have on their property a place that they can rent as a gîte and Airbnb. And in that case, if the teaching and market stall is generating enough income, in order to optimize the taxes, we would just declare the gîte as a non-professional, and it's called LMNP. So that's not a business, it's a side income, not in the micro-entrepreneurs. We don't eat up all the turnover. So that depends very much on your particular stage situation, where is your most income. So I would say someone who has good potential for teaching, for instance, consultant, I would focus on that for the micro-entrepreneur, and JIT more as a side income as non-professional. And the minimum income be less depending on personal circumstances. I own my home with no mortgage in France already, so will not have mortgage bills. Would that mean I would need to earn less as no accommodation cost? Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So, for instance, for my customers in my French business visa, we do a financial plan, and we also do a personal budget. In the personal budget, we show them a forecast over a year of our running expenses, rent, electricity, and so on. Someone who owns a house paid outright, their running expenses or personal running expenses or budget is much lower because that's already paid for. So you need less income. Something like this, I would defend it, or I would write it down in your cover letter, in your document, to show that your cost of living is actually low because you own the property. Catherine, if I get a visa to start a JIT business, can I also earn money doing something else? Yeah, we'd have to see what you do, but it's feasible. The key thing is that if you need to go for a business visa and you have a JIT, you need to own the property in the first place before you apply for the visa. But JIT, especially in France, they tend to be seen more as a top income. So for my customers who go for business visa, we tend to have a mixture of JIT plus something else. My favorite is retreats. Retreats about whatever you're passionate about, but JIT and wellness retreat, JIT and golfing retreat, JIT and surfing, wine, whatever, that goes well. So you can have a JIT and something else, that's fine. For instance, I have a customer, she has a JIT in Normandy, it might be her who's there late, but she's also doing cooking retreats, cooking lessons online, so that goes well together. How difficult is it, into brackets, really, to switch from the long stay visitor visa either to talent passport or profession libérale? That's my nightmare topic. Extremely hard, I would say. I haven't talked about it in the last few months, but over the last year, I've had 2 or 3 customers for whom we've been working on this for a year. It's a nightmare. The prefecture don't like it. They don't understand. They don't know how to handle it, for a start. For instance, I have a couple living in Paris. They dropped everything in the US to come and live in Europe, moved to France. They were professional. They had businesses before. They've had several businesses before. They're really, truly professional. They've done a great business plan. And we're struggling to get it because the prefecture doesn't know how to handle it. They say, oh, right, we haven't had this before. So they just leave it on the desk. And then their current visa expires. So we're stressing out because the visa is expired and they're in a tricky situation. And then months later, say, oh, yes, we did know about it. Oh, we knew about you, but we haven't had time to do it. It was like 4 months after the visa had expired. So very, very tricky situation. For some people, actually advise sometimes to go back home to change it because it's less stressful. But then the problem is that your current visa has to end for you to prepare the next move where you go home and ask for the switch. So you could prepare the switch, or you could, it's not a switch in that case, it's going home to apply for a proper business visa, but it means being back home for a little while. Be careful when we talk about the micro-entrepreneur visa. Micro-entrepreneur is a business type. It's not a visa. So visa is visa profession libérale, visa talent. And it's true that most of the time people go for micro-entrepreneur, but micro-entrepreneur is a business setup. I'm getting towards the end now, just to get as many as possible answered. Can I change my profession libérale to visa talent easily? Well, first of all, if you have a visa profession libérale and you're doing really well with your visa profession libérale, when you get to renew it, you could ask for pluri-annual or multi-year renewal. And that's feasible. In that case, it would give you 4 years. But in order to do so, the law is changing on the 1st of Jan 2026. I would say to ask for multi-year renewal for visa profession libérale, your business needs to do well. So I would say at least 40, 50,000 euros of turnover for consultants. So at least you're aiming for pretty much twice the SMIC. In the past, it was just that. If your business was doing really well, ask for multi-year renewal, you get it. And I've had quite a few customers who manage this as long as you state black and white on the cover letter, my business has been doing very well, I was planning on doing so much, I've done the double, I've got signed contracts for the coming year, it's going really well, my French is doing well, I bought a house, whatever. I'm asking for multi-year renewal. Just add the title, multi-year renewal. People will get 4 years. From the 1st of Jan, the rule is changing. In order to get this, you also need to reach an A2 level of French. So you would need to do a DELF test to prove that you have an A2 French level. And in that case, you could still get a multi-year renewal. So in that case, you could go for Visa Talent, but the Profession Libérale can also get you this. And you can indeed normally move from a Visa Profession Libérale to Visa Talent, but in that case, you have to go through, prove your master's degree and invest 30K. So it would be, to me, maybe more someone whose business might need more investment and they want to put the money in. Am I understanding correctly that talent visa means you cannot be micro-entrepreneur? Yes, you can. You can be micro-entrepreneur. I've got a few people who have a micro-entrepreneur business. We have a successful business in the US for 11 years now and a master's degree. So we qualified for talent, but I like the ease of the tax setup for the micro-entrepreneur. Yeah, you can have a micro-entrepreneur. I have a few people for whom they have a micro-entrepreneur setup. It depends on what works best for your business, what looks the best, and what would be the most tax efficient. Helen says, I'm very confused as to whether costume design and construction is considered as artistic activity or manual craft. Costume design, it wouldn't be seen as artistic, it would be seen as craft, more like, because the closest to France would be couturier. So it would be seen as manual crafts, artisan. So it'd be a business visa. Unless you were doing unique piece for museum or something like that, but couturier, artisan. Patricia says, just to clarify, if a writer self-publishes, then it is Profession Libérale, and if published by a major publisher, it is Visa Talent Artistique. Usually in France, people who self-publish books, most of the time, they're micro-entrepreneurs. Visa Talent artist is just a question that you have to prove you are a recognized artist. So you definitely need to showcase that you have had several books published, you are a recognized artist, and so on. So the Visa Talent artist, you really have to show that you're recognized in your field, you had books published, you had plays done, and that coming to France is going to help improve your art. My husband and I would like to move to France on a long-term visa, then spend a year deciding where to live and set up a business. Can we change from a long-term visa to a business visa while in France? So that's the answer I gave earlier. I would say, if you're a long time from finding the place, you're not sure which area you really like, you haven't bought the property, and I have a few customers like this, come on a long stay visitor visa, but in that case, plan that you're going to go home for a few months to then apply for the right visa, because switching from France, you're going to be losing 2 years. You need to renew your visitor visa at least once from France before you can switch. So you do your 1 year, you renew it, and it's only at the end of that year that you can switch, and you're going to be losing months because the prefecture is not used to it. So I would say, for some people, for instance, I had customers, we talked last week, there's 2 areas they want to stay a couple of months into, or months, at least a month in, to decide which one they like. And then that area they're going to stay longer to look for properties. They're going to buy a property, start restoring it. And their idea is that they're going to go home at the end of that to apply for the business visa and come back. And it's slightly less hassle. The tricky bit is you need to have somewhere to stay when you go back home, maybe with friends or family. But if you're on a long stay visitor visa, at least be aware that you have to renew it once from France before you can switch. So I'm almost at the end. I'm looking for more questions and we'll be done. When applying for a Profession Libérale visa, which box is the correct one to choose on the France visa application form? If I want to live in France 5+ years, should I choose length 0 to 6 months or over 1 year? Always over 1 year. Because the aim is you're going to be coming here for 1 year and then renew it. So it's always make sure you take the first one. So, otherwise, you'll have a 6-month visa, you'll have to go home, you can't renew it from France. So it's over 1 year. Almost there. Are you able to say a bit about the course I saw on your site to help people with a business visa? I think this would be great for us. The course is called My French Business Visa, and it's a pre-recorded course where I'm helping you work on your business idea. See how it's going to work with the French reality of the different visa you can have, the rules that apply to your sector to choose the best idea. And then you're going to start building your business plan, your financial plan, choose the legal structure that is appropriate for your project, and then submit it to ANEF and France Visa. So beside the course, which is pre-recorded, and then you receive emails that are helping you to walk you through the course, you have one-to-one coaching with me, which means that based on your timeline, we might meet every other week, and then we catch up. So you share with me what you've done. So for instance, you start, the first time is more, you brainstorm the idea, and the first time we meet, we just throw back different ideas, talk about your personal situation, and we decide which one has the most potential. And we start having a first go as to say, okay, here's the visa we think is best for your situation. And then for the next, we always say what you work on, but you're going to start working on your business plan. You're going to share it with me on Google Drive, for instance, so I can read it before our next call, and then we debrief. I give you some input on your strategy, on the French rules. It's the best project that we can submit, and basically I'm helping you until we submit it, and when you submit it, we might have requests for information, so I guide you as to what to answer. So it's both a course and one-to-one coaching to help you prepare the best project, and also help you see what your business might look in France. Because when we work on your business plan, we also work on your strategy, and that always comes very handy to start thinking about how you're going to be selling. So I'll add the link below the video. It's called My French Business Visa, and the best time scale for both visa is both visa. It doesn't matter whether it's visa profession or visa talent. Best time scale is 6 months from now, which gives us plenty of time to get ready. What is the minimum savings you need to show proof of? Can this be held in shares? So minimum savings, we said about 18,500. That has to be something accessible, because the idea with that money is that if your business is not doing well, you have to be able to draw that income to live from and pay your bills. So it can't be an investment that is blocked for 7 years. It has to be accessible. Almost there. Just one more question. Wow, I didn't know you could apply for multi-year Profession Liberale visa when renewing. I'm currently working on taking my A2 DELF test in December. Merci beaucoup. Well, that's good news. I think to me it's the same. It's great motivation to work on your French. 1st of Jan, work on your French once you're here from the start, because that could help you to get a multi-year renewal without having to put 30K in the business. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. I think a couple of people sent me some messages I may not have covered before by email, so I will answer to them direct. Thank you so much for joining. The next webinar I'll be doing next month will be, I can say that's a hot topic, will be on the Visa Profession Liberale and the Visa Talent. And I'll be sharing the dates and the link to register in my next newsletter. So I will also add the link to my newsletter. Merci beaucoup for coming today. Speak to you soon. Merci. Au revoir à tous.